Have you ever had to make the painful decision to remove a tree and wondered how the tree felt about it? Or felt the pain of watching trees be removed in your neighborhood while wishing you could do something about it? As painful as it is for us and the trees, there are definitely things you can do to help ease the transition and help the tree spirits cross over. And that's what we're going to talk about today, so stay tuned. Oh hey, I'm Amy from Following Hawks, where I invite you to come home to the earth. Today we are going to talk all about what to do both on the physical and energetic levels when you have to remove a tree or when you see trees in your neighborhood being cut down to help them cross over. But before we dive in, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and click the little bell button so that you'll be notified when new videos are released. Now, let's talk about trees. Last fall, we had two very large trees that needed to be removed that were right in between our house and our shop. They weren't particularly healthy, and with every big windstorm, I worried about one or both of them coming down. I put off removing them for close to 5 years before they started asking for help to come down safely, and that's when I knew I couldn't avoid it any longer. But before I tell you about the process I went through to help these tree spirits cross over as comfortably as possible, let's talk a bit about the ecosystem here in Northwest Montana where I live. Although it looks like a beautiful and pristine mountain forest, it's anything but. The native and old-growth trees in this area, like much of the West, have been logged heavily over the decades. And it's not just the trees that are damaged by clear-cut logging. It's the entire ecosystem that gets trampled by the heavy machinery and altered when the large tree cover is removed. Delicate plants like orchids and ferns on the forest floor can't handle the intense sunlight and sometimes never return after an area is logged. And even a small change in the ecosystem can disrupt the habitats of mammals, birds, insects, and invertebrates. So although the logging companies replanted after the clear cuts, they couldn't replicate the age and species diversity that was present in an old-growth forest. And because they had plans to log the area again in 20 to 30 years, they planted a monoculture of Douglas fir trees that grow fast, straight, and close together. And that's what we have now on our property. Primarily Douglas fir, which is a native tree to this area, mixed with a bit of tamarack, white pine, and grand fir. And because we were the first to build a home on this land, nobody had really been managing the forest here, which means we have a lot of large trees growing too closely together to be healthy. And when Douglas fir trees aren't healthy, they're a target for the bark beetles, another native species to this forest. Now, in normal circumstances, you wouldn't have quite so many Douglas fir quite so close together, all at the exact same age like they are when they're planted in mass after a logging operation. But what our forests have now is a perfect storm of lots of crowded, unhealthy trees, an explosion of bark beetles that are normally kept in check by very cold winters that aren't happening as often these days, and unusually hot summers. It only takes one lightning strike from a summer thunderstorm to ignite a huge wildfire. And when those wildfires reach areas where bark beetles have killed a large number of trees, it's like a tinderbox just waiting to explode. So I tell you all of that to help you understand the need of keeping a healthy forest, especially in wooded neighborhoods like the one we live in. So then back to these two trees that needed to be removed. One of them should have been removed when they were small so that the other one could be healthy, but that didn't happen. And I will tell you, the trees understand this concept. I have spoken to many trees when an area needs to be thinned, and they tell me that they know it's necessary for the health of the overall forest. But because these two trees were left to grow together, now that they were so large, all of their limbs were growing on one side of the tree, putting additional weight on them and leaving them unbalanced. Furthermore, the Doug fir was showing the telltale signs of fighting off an insect invasion with the sap weeping out of the side. A healthy tree can fight the insects and win, but an already unhealthy tree under attack just struggles until it dies. And so the weekend before we were leaving for a month-long trip, the tree showed me an image of it coming down in my mind's eye, and I knew it was time. However, we weren't going to be able to do anything until we returned from our trip, so I went and sat with the tree and let it know that I'd received the message and asked if it could hold out for a few more weeks. Then I showed it which direction it should fall if it needed to come down before we returned so that it wouldn't damage the house or the shop. It did stay in the ground during our trip, but within a few days of getting back home, we had a big storm with 60-mile-an-hour winds, and I was really worried that it couldn't hold on. And so was the tree. It was sending me messages that it was doing the best it could, but it wasn't sure it could control where it fell and really wanted some help to come down safely. I was very sad, but we called the tree guy the next day, and he planned to come the following week to remove both of the trees. So, once you know a tree is going to be removed, here's what you can do to help it cross over in the most peaceful way possible. First of all, know that trees are intertwined in a complex ecosystem, both in the physical and energetic planes. The soil, fungi, other trees and plants, birds and animals will all be affected when the tree dies. But the spirits of the land will also be affected by this change. Fairies, in particular, they care for each and every living thing, and assisting the passing of their souls to the other side is one of their honored roles. So you want to make sure that they know what the plan is so that they can support and assist in the process. Often when I do a reading with a property where I find spirits that are either hiding or outright upset, it's because something's been done on the land where they weren't consulted or they just didn't understand what happened. So sometimes just explaining what happened and why is all that's needed to help shift the energy. So you can go sit with the tree if you have access to it, or just tune into its energy from wherever you are if it's on a neighboring property, and have a conversation with it in your head. Ask for any other spirits who are responsible for this tree to join you, and let them know when the tree will be removed and why. And then ask them if there's anything specific they'd like you to do. With my trees, I did 2 small ceremonies, giving them some spring water and dropping gratitude and forgiveness essential oils at their roots, and then just spent some time sending them Reiki, sharing my gratitude, and letting them know I was sorry. The fairies thanked me for the advance notice and planned a party for them in their honor. On the spirit level, they were all able to celebrate the lives of these trees, and then the fairies told me that they would energetically put the trees to sleep. Now, I'm not going to say that it wasn't still very sad. I cried for them more than once in that last week, but each day that I went out and sat with them, I could feel their energy a little bit less. They really were going to sleep and pulling back their energy before they were physically cut down. And on that day, I just held space for them as the process was completed. I could sense that the spirits of the land were doing the same, paying their respects to their tree friends as well. And the fairies helped the tree spirits to cross over. I did one final offering after it was said and done, sharing some more water and oils with the stumps, along with my gratitude for all they did in their lives. Now, once the tree is down, or maybe even before it comes down, there is one more very important question to answer. What are you going to do with it? The trees always want to be of service, and there are many ways for it to continue to serve after its physical life has come to an end. Of course, it can be used as firewood to heat your home if you have a fireplace or a wood stove. And then you can spread the ashes on your garden beds, compost pile, or around the base of other trees as fertilizer. The ashes are very high in lime and potassium and will nourish the next generation of plants and trees. Or you could burn it with the purpose to create biochar, which is a similar process, except instead of burning all the way to ash, you want to burn the wood down to chunks of charcoal, which, when added to the soil, helps it to fix more nitrogen and makes a home for zillions of beneficial microorganisms. Another option would be to use some of the tree's logs to inoculate with spores to grow mushrooms. Your tree would be thrilled to play host to some shiitake mushrooms to help feed your family. It would be quite the honor. Of course, if you have enough space, you could just lay the logs on the ground in places on your property and let the native mushroom spores, moss, and insects move in and decompose the tree slowly and naturally, enriching the soil and ecosystem. Now, depending on the size of your tree and any projects you might have around your place, you could build raised garden beds with the logs, or you could have the tree milled into boards that you could use for building projects. Depending on where you live, you may be able to find someone with a portable mill who will come to your house and mill the log on site. Take a look on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace for people offering their services. Of course, you'll want to know if this is your plan before the tree is cut down so that you leave the trunk in appropriate lengths for the boards that you want to have milled. You could also rent a wood chipper and chip the logs for mulch around your trees and your garden. I would encourage you to brainstorm all of the creative ways you could keep the tree on your property and give it additional ways to live and serve. And if you know what your plan is before the tree is removed, let the tree know. They're always happy to know what's going to happen next. So let me know down in the comments of any other ways you can think of to honor a tree and let it continue to serve. Now, although I've talked more about what to do if you have to make a decision to remove a tree, many of these same practices hold true if you suddenly lose a tree in a storm or from some other damage. You just need to remember that when that happens, there is a fair amount of shock to both the tree and the spirits of the land. So treat them gently as you would a friend who's just experienced a sudden loss. Sit with the tree, put your hands on it, send it some extra energy, and let it know how sorry you are for the loss. Let it know what you plan to do with it and ask the spirits if there's anything they need from you. Sometimes the surrounding trees feel just as shocked as the one that was damaged. So it might be soothing for them if you sang or toned or played a singing bowl or another instrument to send them some extra love. I have a whole workshop on how to tone with nature if you're interested in learning more about toning and why it works. And one final note about trees being damaged in storms. I found that when I work with the spirits and energies present on my land before big storms, the damage is usually very minimal. When a big storm is on the way, I just call out to the trees in my head and let them know that it's about to get very windy and do their best to hold on. I also ask the guardian spirits on my property to help any trees that need it, and in our 5 years here, we have only lost one tree in a storm. Even in storms that have leveled large areas of trees on neighboring properties, our trees will be fine. So don't underestimate what's possible in the physical by working with the energetics. Now, if you want to know more about guardian spirits, along with a guided meditation to call them into your home and property, I'll add a link on that below. And finally, if you're interested in learning even more about communicating with the natural world, come join me in the Earth Tenders Academy. The Earth Tenders Academy is my online course for those of us feeling called in service to the earth. You'll learn how to use shamanic journeying to enter liminal states, to communicate with the spirits of the land, and how to do healing work in partnership with these spirits to help release trauma and improve the energy in your home and surrounding communities. You'll be part of an amazing community of Earth Tenders from around the world. So check out the link below to learn more, and I'll see you next week. Bye.